Hey guys, Hybrid here with another character bios. If you obviously couldn't tell, it's Spider-Man, but not just any Spider-Man, the Amazing Spider-Man, which basically means Peter Parker Spider-Man. Mostly doing this one because I did a Superior Spider-Man one, I did an Ultimate Spider-Man one with Miles Morales, and I know Peter Parker's coming back to comics, and they're making the new Amazing Spider-Man movie, but one thing the movies didn't do was 100% translate, obviously, the comic book background / origin of Peter Parker, which is to be expected, honestly, because not everything translates to movies well, or just creative ideas of the director / writers. But yeah, actually, believe it or not, the Raimi films, if you're going for what's closest to the comics, the Raimi films were actually pretty close origin wise. But yeah, let's get to it. And obviously, Spider-Man is a very popular character for a lot of people. He's their favorite character. He's not on the top of my list, but he's pretty high up there. So let's begin. I don't want to waste any more time before we actually start the video. So, origins. Peter Benjamin Parker, as his real name, was the son of Richard and Mary Parker, who were actually CIA agents. When Peter was 6 years old, his parents actually died in a plane crash. There's tons of stories, side stories that talk about that, and it seems like the Amazing Spider-Man film is going to venture into that in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 coming out this summer. So yeah, it's cool that they're kind of going more into that, because at first, when it was in the first Spider-Man comics, it was like, just they died in a plane crash, but obviously over time stories came out going into it and became more. Now, his Aunt May and Uncle Ben then raised him in Forest Hills, New York. And Peter grew up very brilliant, actually. His IQ when he was younger was higher than 250. But he was also very shy. And due to this, he didn't really have many friends. Actually, he barely even had any friends whatsoever. I just put many friends so it didn't seem as pathetic and, sad. So by the time Peter got to high school, he was the top of his class. He was, obviously, like I said, he was very, very, very smart. Probably in high school, all honors classes, AP classes, and he got honor roll all the time, probably top of the dean's list, whatever. But the downside to this was that he was bullied a lot, and also he's a social outcast. None of the Spider-Man movies have really capitalized on that, because while they do venture to it in the Raimi Spider-Man film, after that one fight scene, they kind of he just graduates. They do the whole time skip thing where he graduates and they kind of move on from it. In the Amazing Spider-Man, Flash does bully him, a bit, but then they kind of, after his Uncle Ben died, Flash becomes kind of sympathetic to him, and they kind of leave that, so. But the social outcast part is pretty, I think, well enough shown in Amazing Spider-Man to give you guys a good example, because I know most of you guys watched the movie. So, but anyways, there's that. Yes, Flash Thompson, who becomes Agent Venom later on, was his bully and ends up looking after Spider-Man. It's actually a pretty cool story. He's Spider-Man's #1 fan, and actually he and Peter end up becoming best friends after high school while they're in college. But one day Peter went to a radiology science experiment, and a spider, which was actually mutated by the radiation, bites Peter before it dies. Now, I know in the Ultimate Universe, and in the Raimi film, and in the Amazing Spider-Man films, they're using genetically altered spiders to make it more modern, because the reason behind this is that back in the day, the big thing was radiation, nuclear warheads, nuclear weapons. Now everything is genetic engineering, genetic engineer this, genetic engineer that, GMOs, all that stuff. So that's why this is the big issue right now. That's why it's changed over time. But they've never really updated this in the mainstream universe, so it's still a radioactive spider, which I wish they used in Amazing Spider-Man, because that would have been pretty cool. Now, Peter immediately starts experiencing physical changes such as enhanced strength and senses. He leaves the experiment because he starts feeling odd after he gets bit by a spider, and he actually doesn't notice a car speeding towards him, and he, obviously his spider sense goes off and it warns him before it can hit him, and he actually jumps several feet forward, but several feet high up in the air also, and sticks to a building. So it's pretty cool. And seeing an ad actually later on, which basically it's for pro wrestling, WWE type wrestling, not actual wrestling, stage wrestling, and it's to go 3 minutes in the ring with a wrestler called Crusher Hogan, just like in the Raimi movies. So like I said, the Raimi movie was actually pretty close to it. And, Peter does this, and, with his abilities, he does pretty well, actually putting on quite a show, and he does it, quite a few more times. And later on, he actually gets, not a role on TV, but he gets put on TV as an act. And Peter, to kind of accompany this, he makes a costume and web shooters and goes by the name Spider-Man while in costume. So the costume you see here, you're probably wondering, what the hell is this costume? This is actually the costume he used for his wrestling career. It was a comic called, I think it was Spider-Man, not Web of Spider-Man, but it was something along those lines, where basically they go a little bit more into Spider-Man before the shooting of Uncle Ben while he was still wrestling, kind of like one of their origin stories. But it's pretty cool. As you can see here, he's currently wrestling someone named Chopper, and he talks about in this comic, in this comic actually, Crusher Hogan kind of mentors him in pro wrestling, because the key is not to injure the person, but make it look like the person could get hurt, and they put on a great show. So that's what this is. I know in the Amazing Fantasy comic he wore something totally different, but later on he got another costume, and this actually looks a lot like the Amazing Spider-Man film costume. So I think that's pretty cool too. So after his first performance, actually, a thief was escaping from a robbery, and ran straight by Spider-Man. Now, Spider-Man didn't feel responsible in any way, shape, or form for this, so he let the thief get away, because he let all the money and fame get to him, making him very, very selfish. As you can see in that image there, Spider-Man says, "I just look out for number one. That means me." But a few nights later, when he gets home from a show, he learns his Uncle Ben was murdered. Finding out the murderer's location, Peter went to confront him. Now, when he was close enough to him to actually see who it was, he realized this was the same thief from before that Peter let get away, which obviously shocked him greatly. And feeling responsible for the death of his Uncle Ben, Peter realized that with great power comes great responsibility. And from here on forward, he became a hero, known as Spider-Man, because he didn't change his name. And in case you're wondering, Uncle Ben in comics did not say, "With great power comes great responsibility." That was actually one of those bubbles that the writers have that Stan Lee put in there at the end of the comic. But it's become such a popular phrase with Spider-Man. Stan Lee didn't create it either. It was around before him. I can't remember exactly where it's from. Before Stan Lee put in the Amazing Fantasy number 15 issue, but it's so closely kind of incorporated to Spider-Man, and so closely incorporated with Uncle Ben's death and everything like that, and basically every interpretation following, they've had Uncle Ben be the one that said that. So as the hero Spider-Man, Peter struggled to maintain a double life while still, being a high school student, because this happened to him while he was in high school. I think he was a junior or a senior at the time. They don't ever officially say which one, because different interpretations have different, ways of doing it. Some of them, he's even a sophomore in high school. But he was a high school student when he fought a good chunk like Doc Ock and all them, and Vulture. He was still in high school. And he continued this on to college too. And it really made it hard for Peter to, have a life, because he was splitting it across like this. And one thing special about Spider-Man versus other heroes was that he had no mentor. So he was on his own, finding out, how to do these things, how to balance being a hero and a civilian, stuff like that. So he actually suffered various tragedies, obviously, infamously, the death of Gwen Stacy, Captain Stacy, Uncle Ben, Jean Wolfe. Tons of people in Peter's life have died throughout him being Spider-Man, which has obviously weighed very heavily on him. But at the same time, in his career as Spider-Man, he's been one of New York's greatest heroes. Technically, he's been one of the Earth's greatest heroes. But I say New York because, based largely in New York and stays mostly in New York, very rarely is he a global hero, so to speak. But Spider-Man uses his amazing abilities to save and help millions in Uncle Ben's memory. Abilities. Spider-Man has superhuman strength, speed, durability, reflexes, agility, senses, healing, and wall crawling. He's also a brilliant scientist, inventor, and skilled photographer, and he has web shooters. So superhuman strength, he can lift about 10 tons. Speed, I think it's about 30 to 60 times faster than a normal person, like reflex and whatnot wise. But he can run over 60 miles per hour easily. Durability, he's very durable. He has done things like survive getting knocked through buildings, out of buildings, onto the ground. Basically tons of crazy stuff. Senses, obviously, and that incorporates spider sense, but also his eyesight's very good. Originally, Peter Parker had poor eyesight and needed glasses, but after he got his powers, his eyesight became perfect, essentially, so to speak, so he didn't need them anymore. And also, hearing and all that stuff goes with it too. Agility, he's extremely agile. Spider-Man's one of the most acrobatic, also, heroes out of all of them. Very well known for his acrobatics, especially while web slinging. A lot of people think, and I'm kind of quoting something I read here, but a lot of people think he's showing off when he's just that acrobatic all the time. Healing, he could survive. I remember one comic, he survived he healed a broken arm in one overnight, sleep. He slept for 6 hours, woke up the next day, broken arm was totally okay. Wall crawling, obviously, I'm not going to explain how wall crawling works, but he can stick to surfaces, and also he's a brilliant scientist, especially in chemistry and biotechnology in particular. Inventor, obviously, he's made tons of gear as Spider-Man to help him as Spider-Man. The spider belt with the light, he's done that. The web cartridges, obviously the web shooter, and so on, like spider armors and tons of things to help him fight different villains. And obviously he's a skilled photographer because he took pictures of himself for the Daily Bugle for the longest time. Now, obviously you're noticing the picture on the left here. That's from my favorite Spider-Man story ever written to this day, which is the Master Planner story arc. I have it in a hardcover collection, and it's just, I love it. It's the first Spider-Man story I ever read, actually, was the Master Planner story arc, which is why it hits home for me so well. So I put it there to show you not only Spider-Man's strength, but another ability I think he has that I didn't write down here, which is his willpower and dedication. In this comic, Aunt May was sick, and it was his fault in a way because he gave Aunt May a, not blood transfusion, but blood donation. If I remember, I'm pretty sure I got this right. A blood donation, but the radiation in his blood was killing Aunt May. Now, Doc Ock, though, had the cure, essentially, and stuff goes on. I don't want to spoil it, but stuff happens, and obviously, as you see here, Spider-Man gets pinned under the rubble of Doc Ock / the Master Planner's hideout. And it's just a beautiful scene, and it's been redone plenty of times. I'd say the best version I've seen in modern media is the Spectacular Spider-Man TV show, but it's just a beautiful moment in Spider-Man history, and it really just shows his willpower, his dedication, and it's just great. Now, recommend the reading. Obviously, Amazing Fantasy, number 15, which is the origin of Spider-Man. Amazing Spider-Man number 31 to 33, which is the Master Planner story arc. More specifically, it has the panels I was talking about, where it has Spider-Man pinned under the rubble, and he lifts it up and all that great stuff. Amazing Spider-Man number 50, Spider-Man Kraven's Last Hunt. I put collection there because it spans different Spider-Man titles, but you can buy the whole storyline as a collection. It's one of the greatest Spider-Man stories ever written. If you look up Kraven's Last Hunt, it will be on tons of people's top 10, top 5, top 3 Spider-Man stories of all time list. Now, after that, Spider-Man Blue. I own Spider-Man Blue. I read it every Valentine's Day, actually. It's like a tradition I have, and it's one of my favorite. It's my, I say, second or third favorite Spider-Man story ever written. It's amazing. It basically covers Peter meeting Gwen Stacy, them falling in love, and up to her death, essentially. And it's just really great. Also, kind of covers how Mary Jane and Peter met and got close to each other out of Gwen's death. But it's just a beautiful story, and I highly recommend that story. That and the Master Planner arc above everything else. And obviously, Amazing Spider-Man number 121 to 122, which is Gwen Stacy's death. Major part of Spider-Man's history, called by many to be his greatest failure after Uncle Ben. It's rumored, heavily rumored, I believe this one, that Gwen Stacy will die in Amazing Spider-Man 2, and yeah, I hope if they do kill her in Amazing Spider-Man 2, they really get the emotional impact this gives on Peter Parker, because this has been brought up so many times in future Spider-Man stories just due to the weight of it. Because this was someone that Peter Parker in comics, he was going to marry, and Stan Lee even said that one of the reasons they killed her was because they had no way to write her out otherwise, because the way they set her up, Peter was going to marry her, and it would have caused the character to have to age up, and I guess the Marvel Comics wasn't ready for it at the time, so yeah. But anyways, that's it for character bios. I hope this helps you guys. I hope you know more about the character of Spider-Man now, the character of Peter Parker. They will be rebooting the title of Amazing Spider-Man soon, so this is actually a perfect jumping on point once Superior Spider-Man ends. As I'm recording this, Superior Spider-Man has like 3 issues to go. So yeah, Amazing Spider-Man #1 will be out within the next 2-3 months or so. So yeah, go get that, and I hope this helps you guys, this hybrid, and I'll see you guys later.